Hey guys, Telegram Sam here. If you don't already know, I have an Instagram. It's telegram_Sam_vinyl. So if you're on Instagram, check me out on there. But in today's video, we're just going to be talking about 5 artists slash albums that when I first initially listened to, I didn't like, but then have now grown to love. Actually, we'll get started with the artist that sort of inspired this video, because I really didn't like him when I first heard him, but now I really love him and have several of his records, and I've been really loving this one. Currently, this is Tom Waits' Swordfish Trombones. I always knew who Tom Waits was. I remember I was a teenager in high school, obviously, and I had a creative writing class, and that teacher was a huge fan of Tom Waits. I remember he had a big picture of Tom Waits in his classroom, and this is when I really started reading a lot of like Charles Bukowski, William Burroughs, Ken Kesey, Hunter S. Thompson, Jack Kerouac, and he would see all these books I was bringing in, and he was like, you should really listen to Tom Waits. If you like all of these writers, I think you would really like his songwriting and his music and stuff. And I remember I listened to like one of the songs he suggested, I don't even remember which one, and I just did not like it. I didn't get his voice at the time. It just kind of sounded like he was gargling gravel to me. And this sort of weird like neo-vaudevillian thing I just didn't get at the time, so I didn't listen to him for a while. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I watched the Jim Jarmusch film Down by Law, which is now one of my all-time favorite movies. I love that movie, and Tom Waits is in it, and the opening song is one of his songs, and I really loved it. And then ever since then, I just have gone on this new discovery path of Tom Waits' music, and I've been really loving it. And I'm so glad I gave him a second chance, and this is a fantastic album. I feel like Tom Waits is one of those artists people really love or just don't get. When I was posting his stuff on my Instagram, people were like, is there something wrong with me that I don't like Tom Waits and everyone else seems to love him? I'm like, no, it's your taste, and that's totally fine if you don't like an artist. I mean, there's still artists that I listened to back in the day that I don't think I will like or don't think I'll ever gravitate towards to again. But things change, your music tastes change and evolve, and sometimes you end up loving things that you didn't initially like, and it's okay if you still don't like something that you thought you would love. So, love Tom Waits. Next up, an artist I've really gotten into this last year, Linda Ronstadt. Linda Ronstadt to me was just, a 70s like pop singer. I didn't really grow up listening to Linda Ronstadt. My parents were more into like hard rock, heavy metal stuff. And then I evolved into loving punk, and to me Linda Ronstadt wasn't an artist I would really thought I would be listening to her like, so I never really listened to her stuff. I would only ever hear her stuff on the radio, and I was just like, whatever. And then I think either last year or earlier this year, I watched the documentary, I'm blanking on what it's called, sorry, that they did about her a couple years ago, and it just completely changed my perspective and way of thinking about her, because she was just one of the all-time greatest singers ever. I mean, she really made her career out of doing cover songs, which is a really hard thing to do and become really popular. But because she had such a fantastic voice, she could have sang the phone book and it would have sold millions of records because she was just so talented. And I have several of her albums now, and she's just become one of my all-time favorite singers, especially female singers. She could really sing anything, rock, country, blues. She did several fantastic Spanish albums that I'm really on the hunt for, and I just can't believe that I've only really listened to her stuff this last year and never knew how amazing she was. So, love Linda. Next up, we have Captain Beefheart, Safe as Milk. Yeah, I remember very early on when I really started like getting into music and trying to discover new music when I was an early teen. You know, I was a part of a lot of these like Facebook music pages, and I'd always see people post about the album Trout Mask Replica, saying it was like one of the greatest albums ever. Uh, and yeah, I remember looking it up on YouTube, and like the first minute I was like, what the fuck is this? Because, you know, back then I was just listening to, you know, classic rock, you know, Rolling Stones, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, you know, very basic stuff, not this crazy experimental, like, free psych rock thing that Captain Beefheart was doing. So I kind of was just like, I'm gonna stay away from that artist. And I can't remember where I heard the song. Oh my god, I do remember where I heard the song. I was getting one of my tattoos that's on my leg, and the tattoo artist was just playing some Spotify mix of some like 60s sort of psych rock music. And the song I'm Glad from this album came on, and I just fell in love with it. I was like, what is this? And they're like, oh, I think it's Captain Beefheart. And I was like, really? Because if you've heard the song I'm Glad, you know it's kind of very like a sort of slow burn, sort of R&B rock song. But it's very different to a lot of other Captain Beefheart songs. And I just fell in love with it, and I looked it up and found out it was part of this album, Safe as Milk, and I went to the record store and I found this really nice music on vinyl version of it, and yeah, I just fell in love, and I've really been rediscovering his work these past like 3 or 4 years. I mean, if you were to ask me now, this would probably be in one of my top 25 albums in my collection. And I just love it. And, you know, he does go out there. This is very early in his career. So he has some more basic songs, but then he has some crazy, you know, early psych rock experimental stuff. Not as crazy as Trout Mask Replica. I still have to re-tackle that album. I'm kind of holding out and waiting for a good vinyl version of it to come my way, because I feel like that's the way you're supposed to listen to that record. But I really love Captain Beefheart and was really glad that a tattoo artist helped me rediscover my love for his work. So next up we have, this is probably, depending on what day you ask me, one of my top 10 all-time favorite records. I just love it, and it's kind of crazy that there's a point in time where I despised this artist, could not listen to anything she was on, but this is Chelsea Girl by Nico. Again, part of like these Facebook groups, a lot of people were really into the Velvet Underground, and especially loved the first album with Nico. And I remember trying to listen to that album, but I just could not stand her sort of monotone voice. It was just very out of the woods thing for me to listen to. I'd never heard a singer, let alone a female singer, sing like that. And it just kind of drew me away from Velvet Underground. Even though I liked a lot of the other Velvet Underground stuff without Nico in it, I didn't listen to that first album for a really long time because of it. But I remember when I first moved to Oregon and I got my first job and I got my first paycheck, I remembered, I was like, I'm going to go splurge. I'm going to go to the record store and spend like $100. I'm going to treat myself. And I remember going to the record store and they were playing this like really amazing, like very stripped back folk singer-songwriter album. I was like, wow, I really love this chick's voice. I wonder who this is. And I looked up front and saw it was this album. I was like, what? And I was like, there's no way. And then I went up front to be like, are you guys really playing Nico? You know, like the Nico from Velvet Underground? Like, and they were like, yeah, this is her solo album, Chelsea Girl. I was like, God, I love this. And yeah, I didn't buy it then, but I bought this I think last year. This is a reissue. And yeah, I just really love this album, and I've grown to love some of her other work. I also have her album Drama of Exile, which is one of my favorite reissues of last year. Sounds amazing, and yeah, I just really love this album. It's a game-changing album. Nico was such a unique artist. There is no one that will ever sound like her because she had such a unique way of singing and like the musical orchestration she had on her albums, and she was just so ahead of her time. And yeah, I'm just so glad that I finally now love her and get her and can now listen to the first Velvet Underground record without being turned off by her voice, and now like embracing her voice and what she brought to the band. So love this. And last but not least, probably a shocker for some of you, because if you've watched any of my videos, you know this is my all-time favorite band, and their other album, Raw Power, is my all-time favorite album. But this one took me a really long time to get into. This is Funhouse by the Stooges. Yeah, when I first got into the Stooges, I sort of started off listening to their first album because that's the album that has "I Want to Be Your Dog" on it, which is probably the most well-known song. And then I listened to Raw Power because that's where I heard, that's their most like punk rock album. And then I kind of went to this one because this one was kind of like the one that was like you kind of need to brace yourself for for this one. And I love the first side because the first side's very sort of hard rock kind of. You had some psych elements from their first album, but then it got to the second side, and that's where it lost me. Because if you're familiar with this album, you know that the second side is kind of just like this balls to the wall, like free noise rock, free jazz, crazy saxophone, guitar, drumming. It's a lot to listen to if you're not really into noise rock, free jazz, whatever the hell you want to call it, that's on the second side of this album. It was very jarring to me when I first listened to it, and this album still is not my favorite Stooges album. Out of their first three, this is probably my third favorite. But for a lot of people, this is their all-time favorite album from them because it is so out there and it is so ahead of its time. And I think now I have a better appreciation of this album now that I've gotten more into jazz and sort of experimental freestyle music where there are no rules, which the Stooges are all about. And yeah, this one just took me a while. It probably wasn't until like last 2 years I really started to appreciate this record and how great it is and how ahead of its time it still is. But yeah, Stooges Funhouse, not my favorite, but I definitely love it a lot more than I originally did when I first listened to it. But yeah, those were 5 records or artists / albums that I did initially love, but now I love. Definitely comment some of your artists or albums that you kind of have that same feeling towards. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.